Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to let everybody join in here and go grab a coffee, grab anything you guys need. We're going to start promptly at 2 p.m. Hey, everyone. I see everybody joining in here. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started promptly at 2 p.m. this afternoon. So just another minute, and we'll get everything kicked off for you guys. Hey, guys. I just rolled over to 2 p.m. I just want to introduce myself and my colleague. So my name is Brandon Duclos. I'm the director of the network practice for Champion Solutions Group. I also here with my colleague Jason Milgram, who's our director of their Azure business practice. Today we're going to go ahead and get started with some Azure networking and security and just dive into a couple of the topics a little bit deeper. It's going to be led primarily by Jason. Also, guys, we're going to review the agenda here in a second, but also we're going to record this. We're going to send it out as well so that anybody has any questions, you miss something halfway through, we'll make sure you get a copy of the slides and a copy of the recording to your email. And then also, if you have any questions or anything going forward, feel free to enter it into the chat or into the questions box. We're going to try to answer things as we go, but we're also going to try and answer at the end too, so we don't want any questions to go unanswered. So just kind of going through our agenda this afternoon, we're going to go over the Azure Virtual LAN first. That'll be led by Jason and myself, and then we're going to jump into a little bit more on the security side, go into the Azure Firewall, and then into the different Azure Monitor, Event Hub, and then the Security Center and some of the SIM products that are running out today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jason and let him kind of dive in here a little bit.
Sure. Thanks, Brandon. I guess quick introductions. So yeah, my name is Jason Milgram. I'm the Azure Practice Director here at Champion. And then, so that means I've been working in Azure for a long time. We have a great team here. We've helped many clients move into Azure, and we've helped clients who were already in Azure just kind of improve their network and security, and also help them with many different things, including app modernization. But Brandon, I'm not sure you introduced your role here at Champion.
Yep, so my role at Champion is to run everything networking. So that includes going out to the cloud as well. So that could be anything agnostic from Cisco, Brocade, different firewall vendors. We almost cover the gambit with it, and we can dive into that a little bit later here as well. But that's kind of what I'm doing on this side. So anything networking, regardless of where you're going, we'll be your guys to get you there.
All right, and Brandon's underselling himself. He is a network and security subject matter expert and has a ton of different certifications behind his name. So I'm very fortunate to have him on the call with us as well. So before we jump into the agenda, because we do have a very kind of wide audience here, we just want to talk briefly about Azure and about security and networking before we get into those specific topics. So for those of you who have attended sessions with me in the past, or I've done assessments or training or implementation work with you guys, you've all heard me say this before, which is what is Azure? And sometimes that's kind of a hard question for people to answer because it's a lot of different things. So this is my personal definition. I've been using it I think since Azure went GA or became generally available in 2010, but Azure is Microsoft's global data centers, and as you can see from this slide, they are now in 54 regions around the globe, and what they're doing is they're abstracting every piece of the enterprise puzzle into a service. So Azure is anything from DevOps to infrastructure, to app modernization, to big data, and to AI and machine learning, and that list keeps on growing. There's over 100 different services in Azure now. Now, from a networking and security standpoint, I mean, Microsoft Azure is absolutely a first-class partner in the networking and security side, and there's tremendous amount of infrastructure and security goodness you get by moving workloads into Azure. Most clients we work with are hybrid, meaning they're on-prem or in traditional racks, as well as in Azure. We have a number of, that's majority of clients. We have quite a few though who are kind of what we call born in the cloud. They've moved everything into the cloud. They try to have as little to no infrastructure at their various locations as possible. So I could definitely go on and talk more about kind of the general aspects of Azure security networking, but I know you guys all came here to focus in on those four initial topics. So let's let's kick everything off with a poll question first. So give me a second. I'm gonna load up the first poll question. And I believe I have launched the poll, and we'll keep it open, I guess, like for 30 seconds. So right now we're averaging about 50% of the folks on who have workloads running in Azure right now. Looks like averaging 30% are saying yes, but only a small environment. And then looks like 15 to 18% are saying planning to start. And then 6% have no plans to start in the near future. So we'll keep that open for just a little bit. All right. So we're going to go ahead and close the poll there. All right. So thank you for taking the time to answer that poll. So the Azure WAN, it was in preview. It's now generally available. It's a lot of folks are very excited about this. So the Azure Virtual Wide Area Network, it's a new service in Azure. It's designed to make it easier to connect your branch locations to each other and also connect them up to your resources that you're placing in Azure. Kind of at the highlighted level, sets up an automated large-scale connectivity offering. It also, because of the way it's set up with the hubs, it allows you to have a unified network as well as policy management. We'll talk a little bit more what that means. And it also gives you, optimized routing using the Microsoft Global Network. So, all your branch locations, their traffic, not only into Azure, but among each other is running through the Azure network. So you're going to experience, a great low latency and great performance there. So, a lot of us right now in Azure, if you already have an environment in Azure, using site-to-site connections, point-to-site connections, or using ExpressRoute, which is how we connect MPLS into Azure. Probably wondering, so how is Azure WAN different? So that's what we hope to explain with this slide. And then we'll actually jump in and I'll show you what it looks like.
Jason, let me chime in here real quick too.
Sure.
So another nice benefit to that is you mentioned the site-to-site piece of it. What some of our customers may look at too is this may be a way to save some of your money on that expensive MPLS pipe. Pay Microsoft to do it. You're looking at data centers with sub-millisecond latency from point to point. I think that's a huge sell point on this piece. I know you're going to get into that here a little bit later.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And right, so on one of the big differences is between a traditional VPN gateway where you might have done site-to-site locations is that you were limited to 30 site-to-site connections. With the Azure WAN, you can have up to 1,000 site-to-site connections. So huge difference there. Also the max bandwidth. Now these numbers, are changing, as, Microsoft marches through the roadmap and adds more features and functions. But, right now, the Azure WAN, which starts at 500 megabits per second per what they call a scale unit, you can scale that up to 200 gigabits. And to translate that, because a bit, if you want a byte, then you divide it by 8. So that's 2.5 gigabytes a second for bandwidth that you can get at its top performance currently, as opposed to with the VPN site-to-site gateways, it's 1.2 gigabits, which translates to 156 megabytes a second. And I think that's very compelling, especially for people who have many branch offices and they've been wondering, they've had to come up with different designs before with multiple VNets and multiple VPN gateways. This is a much simpler solution to start building out your wide area network.
Hey, Jason, I was paying attention. We had a couple of questions there from the initial slide you brought up on the WAN side of it. The first question was from a gentleman asking if does virtual WAN support IKE v1 as well as v2?
And the answer is yes. And that's actually a great question. Thanks for asking that, because it kind of ties into this next slide, which I'm not, Brandon, I'll turn this over to you because you're our VPN device subject matter expert. And then I'll talk about how that relates to a follow-on question for this slide.
Perfect. And I saw another question out there as well too. I'm going to try and answer it here as we're going. So the answer is it can replace the MPLS piece of it and the VPN piece of it to some areas. So that's something that it is capable of doing today. It's not going to replace it 100% of the time, but you are going to notice some cost savings from what we've seen with clients as we run it out that way. And then also thank you, Jason, for kind of turning it over here for the SD-WAN piece of it. So today, these are the preferred VPN device partners they have out there. So they're preferring to work with Barracuda, they're preferring to work with Checkpoint, Citrix, and a couple other people that are out there. The reason they're really leaning into that technology is those are some of the early developers that were in the SD-WAN space. So you'll notice Riverbed's been out there for a while. Palo Alto Networks is out there because of some high-end back-level stuff they're doing with Riverbed, where they're taking that next-gen firewall and they're embedding it within the SD-WAN technology. And then I saw that there was a question out there too for, they mentioned no Cisco or Meraki. It's not preferred today, but yes, they can work.
Right, and I'll add on to that, because that ties into that earlier question about the IPsec and any device supporting the kind of IKE1 or IKE2 can work. These are the preferred ones because they've built in a lot of automation. The idea is they want to make this as easy as possible to bring in a device, plug it in, it will, connect, pull down its configuration. They're trying to automate as much as possible. So any device that supports, IKE 1 and 2 will work, but these are the preferred ones. And of course, that preferred list will kind of grow as more of the vendors start supporting kind of these automated or automatic WAN deployment setups. All right,
Awesome.
so
thank you for that, Jason.
All right, so you might be wondering how to implement, and my purpose of putting this here is it's actually not that hard to implement. Now, when building out your environment, initial focus, you want to focus on the network and security, and there's a number of considerations around that. But as far as building the WAN, create your virtual network, you create the WAN, you create a site, you create the hub, you associate the sites with the hub, you connect your VNet to the hub, and then you download your VPN configurations, which it's actually a single download after you build out your environment. But let me show you what that actually looks like. So on my screen, and then Brandon, let me know when you can see it. I'm showing my Azure portal.
So perfect. I'm able to see it right now, and I can see all your different tabs and everything you have open as well too.
Okay, so this is my personal test environment. I use this environment to do training and demos a lot. And I put together a virtual, I put together the initial pieces of a virtual WAN. So the first part you would do is you create the virtual WAN, which one of these pieces, and I don't remember if it's the virtual WAN or the first hub, one of them takes 30 minutes in the background to create. So if you're in a pinch, don't think you can just quickly spin this up. It's not hard to spin up, but one of the pieces takes about 30 minutes in the background to finish completing. But you start out, oh, you know what? Let me click back on that overview page. So if this was a fully built out WAN, I would see hubs, and I can have multiple hubs. In this case, I only have one. And then I can see the connectivity between my hubs and my sites. But you start out by creating your hub. I'm sorry, you create the virtual WAN. Then you would create your VPN sites. Now, I created one. These essentially are the sites that, you'd create a site for each location that you have. So if you have an office in the East Coast, and one in the West Coast and one in the Central US, you'd create 3 sites or as many sites as you need. And you can create up, virtual WAN supports up to 1,000. And you just click on create site. Then create your hubs. in this case, I created a single hub. After you create your hub or hubs, you go back to your sites, and then you associate the sites with one or more hubs. And so you select the sites that you need to associate and click New Hub Association. And then you pick the appropriate hub from your options. Now, in this case, I just have one. And after that, you go to your virtual networks and you connect those. So don't be intimidated. It's not hard to set up. Again, behind all this, you just have to make sure you have an understanding of the networking and the security involved. And actually, that leads me to a point I wanted to bring up earlier when we start talking about it. So for those who are new to Azure, if you come from a traditional data center background or networking and security background, I mean, the good news is everything you learned is true. It's still true. It's just in Azure because everything's abstracted as a service now. The names of the puzzle pieces have changed and how you put them together has changed. And it's also one of the very powerful features of Azure because it's absolutely evolved the nature of the data center, where I have a web-based clickable configurable interface that will allow me to build out, a next-gen data center with, the networking and all the latest in security and compliance, right from this interface. And I can be anywhere and spin this up anywhere in the world. So a great tool. It's definitely a huge change, and it's definitely an evolution of how we do modern computing. So with that, I know we have a second poll question. So we'll go ahead and launch that. And that is, do you have remote locations? And we'll keep this open for about 30 seconds. All right, so we're averaging about 45% have between 1 and 10. We have about 30% who have between 11 and 100. We have about 13% who have over 100 locations. So the Azure Virtual WAN is clearly there's a huge advantage for anyone who has to connect over 30 locations. However, even if you don't have 30, the nature of how you connect them and the bandwidth available to you, there's huge advantages there. So, it's not just for people who have more than 30 locations. All right, I'll go ahead and close that poll. And let's move on to the next section, which is Azure Firewall.
And hey, Jason, before we skip over here, there were a couple of questions I noticed that came out here. One of them was asking, I'm not sure if we can find this out for the customer or not, but they were asking if the Azure WAN service offering is available in countries in the Africa region.
Oh, great question. And the answer is yes, we can find that out. That's something we can quickly look up, but it brings up a good point. Azure, the virtual WAN became generally available. And there are, for right now, you can connect sites to a hub in the same region, and that's in the current release. So of course, with any service, there's a roadmap, and you can't go from 0 to 100% when you release a product. So just right now, you can connect only sites in the same region to a hub. I just wanted to throw that out there. And as far as support in different countries, that's something we could look up. So please, if that's something you type in a question, we'll be able to follow up with you on that post-webinar.
Perfect. And then there was one more out there that I may be able to step in to answer. I saw they mentioned the SD-WAN VPN for Fortinet. I don't think it's preferred today on the Fortinet side. I may be wrong, but I know that you can still use the VPN connection into it. And you can still use some of the SD-WAN functionality within the Fortinet side.
Yeah. And again, you can use any of the VPN devices that support the standards. It's just that with the new preferred devices, it's more of an automated process, which makes it really nice. It's not exactly plug and play, but it's getting pretty close to that, which is great when especially you have to send out a device to a new location that is just being added. Plug it in and get the connectivity up and running. All right, so Azure Firewall, and I notice I'm probably going to have to speed up on some of these to cover all 4 topics. But Azure Firewall, this is new. We've had network security groups before. We have web application firewalls, WAFs, and next-gen firewalls all in Azure. So the Azure Firewall is a new offering. It is a highly available stateful firewall. What makes it very unique, well, unique as compared to an NSG, which I think all of us who've been working in Azure are very familiar with. You can create a firewall and make it available across subscriptions and virtual networks. It also has its own public IP address, so you can use it for what's called SNAT and DNAT. So actually, SNAT is source network address translation, and the DNAT is destination network address translation, which means you can have devices who know the public IP of the firewall, but also devices that connect, so you can verify outbound traffic is coming through your firewall. And those are all things that weren't available with the network security group. I did want to take time, and I think we have time. Brandon, I'm going to just jump and just show everyone the network security group just to remind folks what that is.
Okay, perfect. Let me know if there's anything you need me to jump in and chime in on. I'm trying to keep up with all the questions that are coming on the side.
Okay, so network security groups, those have been around. You can connect them to a subnet and or your virtual network interface card associated with a virtual machine. And essentially you have inbound rules and outbound rules. It's very similar to the Windows operating system firewall with Windows Server, where you have inbound rules and outbound rules. And there's some cool things you can do with it, but it's only connected to, you can either do it to a subnet and or to virtual network interfaces. Whereas the Azure Firewall, you can connect it to all network traffic can go through it, and you can associate it with not just one, but multiple subscriptions and multiple virtual networks. And there are some, these are some of the high level kind of features around it. And we'll also demo what it actually looks like when you spin it up in Azure. But Brandon, any of these on the networking side and security side that you would that I think would be useful to elaborate on for the folks on the call?
Definitely would like to get into that here. I just want to answer one question because I think it was a good one here real quick. Somebody was asking if the firewall supports IPv6. I didn't know if you knew the answer to that one off the top of your head, Jason. I know IPv4 is good, but I'm not sure on the IPv6 side.
Okay, so I want to say yes, absolutely, because I'm pretty sure it is, but that would be something I'd have to double check. So let me, because IPv6 is supported with virtual networks, so I'd have to assume it is supported on the WAN side. But yeah, we'll definitely follow up on that one, because we want to give you the 100% accurate information, not just, well, I'm 99.5% sure.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. And then kind of jumping back over here to the Azure Firewall features. So the way that I see this is coming from a traditional network background, is it's more of it's not going to replace some of your next-gen firewall sets, but what it is going to help with is the micro-segmentation piece we're seeing grow out today within VMware and within some Cisco offerings. What Azure is doing here is they're bringing that to the cloud. So they're doing built-in high availability. They're building in the cloud scalability with it. They're also allowing you to go in. You can now do FQDN tagging with internally to the network. You can start to do some of those traffic filtering rules. And the nice thing that they're doing is they're doing it up to layer 7. So if you're looking at something like NSX or looking at Cisco ACI, those are doing it to layer 4 today. Azure on their cloud side, they're doing it to layer 7 on that microsegmentation piece, which is something I think is really cool.
All right, and let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. So I'm clicking on the Azure Firewall resource in the Azure portal. And if you were creating a new one, you simply click on Add, and there's never, it's not simply clicking on it, but again, this is all a web-based configurable interface. So you create the resource, there's information you need to add to it. And for those of you who haven't been in the Azure portal recently, a number of the services now, they have this horizontal kind of breadcrumb trail that shows you the steps that you go through when creating various services. So we fill out the basic information, then the tags, review everything, and create it. So I have one that I already spun up already, so we don't have to wait for this. And again, it starts with the overview, and we'll just go right to rules because it's a great service. It provides you with great functionality. It's not meant to be intimidating. So here it is, what it looks like. And when you're ready to add rules, your NAT rule collections, your network rule collections, application rule connections, go to the section and then click on Add, and you start filling it out. So again, you have to know how you're configuring this, and that's where your traditional networking and security knowledge come into play, especially if you're going to have this firewall sit in front of or in conjunction with not just maybe one subscription or one virtual network, but multiple ones. So there's planning required before you just spin one up and put it into production. All right, Brandon, anything else, anything that you want to add to this before we kind of go over what the pricing is for Azure Firewall?
I think you've kind of knocked out everything on that piece of it. I saw some questions kind of come in. I know a bunch of you guys have sent some private pieces over to me too. This is mainly today for stuff that's on the back end. I know some of you guys do some decryption and traffic and everything on premise. In this case, most of the traffic on the back end is decrypted already unless you're forcing the encryption. So that's just something I wanted to kind of answer out there as some of those questions have come in. And then I know they've asked again for the slides to be shared out. If you missed it at the beginning, we are going to share out these slides to you guys at the end. I know we're on a tight timeline. We're trying to keep things moving and get you guys' questions answered here as well too.
Yeah, and then this webinar is being recorded, so a link will be sent to everyone. All right, so pricing, yeah, I know I need to speed up because we have a bit more to get through, but like it's a Azure utility service, you pay by the hour. So the Azure Firewall, that translates, the $1.25 an hour translates to $912.50 a month. It has an SLA of 99.95. You do pay for inbound and outbound data processing. So as an example, based on those rates, a terabyte in or out would be $30. Another thing I just want to point out is for those of you who use just-in-time VM port management, which I highly advise from a security aspect of as far as reducing attack vectors, the JIT VM port management is not supported yet with this firewall. So that's in the roadmap. I can't tell you exactly when. And then I think we have one more poll to launch. And this one is, do you have a security policy in place? And this is not a formal Azure security policy, which is available in Azure resources. This is overall company-wide. Do you guys have a kind of a formal security policy? And we'll keep this open. Looks like we're averaging 50 to 55% say yes and fully deployed, so excellent. About 20 to 23% are kind of yes in the middle of deployment, and then about 15% are developing it. Okay, Great, so we'll go ahead and close that poll. Thank you for sharing that information. All right. All right, this gets to our last topic, which I've merged two of the topics into kind of this one because there's a bit to cover. It's a very exciting area. There's really lots to talk about in it, and we're going to try to sum it up in I guess 20 minutes and also have time for questions. So Azure Monitor, Event Hub, Security Center, and SIEMs. So first, what is Azure Monitor? It's a Microsoft resource for collecting and analyzing data. And that data is going to be used to help improve with performance and availability and a lot of other things. So that's Azure Monitor. It's for collecting and analyzing data. Event Hub is it's kind of part of the big data solution. It's an event ingestion service, so it's capable of processing millions of events per second. We have clients in the IoT space who Event Hub is absolutely critical, but it's it's an ingestion service that can process millions of events per second, so it's pretty awesome. Security Center, hopefully everyone's been utilizing that. There's the free version, which has some great recommendations. I highly advise going for the paid version, but it's a security management kind of platform that you can use not just for Azure, but it's growing as far as kind of hybrid cloud environments. And then SIEMs. A lot of us have heard of SIEMs. Some of us think they might be related to the SIEM games that used to exist. But Brandon, for those of us who don't know, can you tell us what a SIEM is?
Yep, so this is for security incident and event monitor. So usually it's a client you're looking at going through, putting some kind of either behavior analytics or machine learning behind your logs just to start to look for anomalies on a day-to-day basis. That's really where that SIEM tool comes in, and there's numerous ones out there, with some of the top ones being IBM QRadar. There's also Splunk that's out there, and there's a few other select partners too. And then some people just use traditional log servers and try to do their own machine learning on top of it. We've seen that come out there too.
Okay. All right. So there's a number of things I wanted to show. I have a couple extra things if we have time I'll show. Let's focus on the SIEM side first. So I am going to Azure Security Center, and then I'm scrolling down to Security Solutions. And here we have selected SIEMs. Now, before I click on that, for those of you who haven't been here in a while, you might notice non-Azure computers. So yes, you can actually start using Security Center to monitor your hybrid environment. So VMs not in Azure. And some of you might also see the common event format, so for your Linux machines. And I love to talk about ATA and Azure ATP, but let's just click on SIEMs because our time is limited. So my Azure, they've created some pre-integrated SIEM connectors. And the pre-created connectors right now are IBM QRadar, Splunk, Sumo Logic, ArcSight, and then any syslog server. And you have to have Azure Security Center set up. You use Azure Monitoring, which we're going to take a look at. All of that data goes into Event Hub, and then from Event Hub, through your connector that you set up, it goes into your SIEM solution. So for those of you who have been struggling with getting your Azure data and log information into your SIEM, there are those pre-created connectors. And again, if you're just using a SIEM solution that's it's not one of the ones with an existing connector, if you can take data in syslog format, you can set that up through an Azure function and have that sent in syslog format to your SIEM solution. All right, so let me, there's still a couple more things you have to do to get this set up. And first is, let's look at Azure Active Directory. So how to start getting that data into the solution. So clicking on Azure Active Directory in the Azure portal and scrolling down, there's a couple ways you can do this. First, I'm just going to click on Diagnostic Settings. So under Monitoring, and I've already added these, but I'm going to show you how you would add it yourself. Just click on Add Diagnostic Setting. You have to give this a friendly name, and then you choose where's the data going. So I had previously created one. I send data to Log Analytics, and I also send it to Event Hub. So you're going to want to stream the data to an Event Hub, and here you choose an existing Event Hub that you have or create a new one. And then you choose, well, what data is being sent. So this is audit logs and sign-in logs. So all of those users flagged for risk or risky events, that's the data that's going to be broken up in here. You choose how much data or which types of data is going to go into your Event Hub. And after you fill it out, give it a friendly name, you save it. And now that's integrated. I'm streaming all that data for my test account into Event Hub. Now, if you go through, that's one way to do it. If you look in the documentation, I think they tell you to click on audit logs. And essentially, this is going to do the same thing. You click on export data settings, and it's going to take you to the same section. So, there's always a couple different ways to go about doing the same things. So again, users flag for risk, risky sign-ins, sign-in audit logs, you can have all that go into Event Hub. Now let's look at Azure Monitor. Oh, actually, let's go ahead and look at Event Hub real quick. So this is the Event Hub that I have, and I have all the data going in there. Again, this is a small test environment, but on the overview page, I can look through period of time on how much data has gone in, last 7 days or last 12 hours, and I can do some more setup from that, but that's the Event Hub. Azure Monitor. This is an Azure resource that is becoming kind of like a new dashboard for monitoring a lot of different information about Azure. So we have application insights in here under network that essentially opens up into Azure Network Watcher. So this is kind of a centralized place you go for monitoring. Something else I want to point out is, for those of us who had been using OMS in the past, Operations Management Suite through Azure Log Analytics, if you go to your OMS portal now, it has a very specific date in January of 2019 where it will be turned off. And a lot of that functionality has been moved either right into Azure Active Directory or into Security Center or into Azure Monitor. So under Insights, if you click on More, you're going to see a lot of, you're just going to see a number of those kind of OMS tiles that you used to see in the OMS portal. They're here now. And if you're looking for some of those other modules to turn on to start analyzing the data that you're feeding in into your system, if you just click on Add, you can start scrolling through and do your AD and Azure AD Analytics, SQL, a lot of different solutions that will create reports around the data that you're sending into this. So we already looked at how to turn on, send your Azure AD logging into Event Hub, or into Azure Monitor, into Event Hub. You might be wondering, well, how do I turn on feed more data into the solution? So under Azure Monitor, if you click on Diagnostic Settings, it's going to show you resources, and it's going to tell you if you've enabled those, if you're sending that diagnostic data yet into the system. So here I have a couple things turned on and a lot disabled. So let's say I want to go to one of the a network security group that I have tied to a front end Linux box. Actually, I've enabled that. Let's find a different one. Um, yeah, let's just do even the public IP for that front end Linux box. It's not enabled, so I'd select that particular resource. I click on Turn on Diagnostic Settings. Just like before, I give it a friendly name, and I say, well, is this going to a storage account, to Event Hub, or Log Analytics? I'm going to select Event Hub and select the Event Hub I'm going to have the data sent to, and then I'm choosing, hey, what logging data and what metrics data am I sending? And that's how you start turning on more and more things to feed more data in. The more data that Azure Monitor is able to collect, it can do more analysis for you. And I think, Brandon, I know we probably have a couple more questions. There's a couple more things I want to show, but you tell me how many questions are we behind?
Yeah. So right now, most of the questions were about the pricing. I think we can wrap those up towards the end of it because they were going back into some of like the virtual LAN, the firewall pieces of it. So I don't
Okay.
want to keep jumping between those topics. I think where you're at right now is good, and then we can get into some of those guys and the questions you have on the pricing piece of it. We're going to try and save for the end. We'll try and wrap up around 2:45, 2:50, giving us 10 to 15 minutes to start to knock out some of the questions.
Okay. And for those who are on, keep in mind if we don't get to your question, they're all logged, so we'll start going through those, post webinar and do follow-ups. So one thing if you go to the old, I'll call it the old alerts resource in Azure, notice it says Alerts Classic and it has this little notice, hey, this is being retired. And that's because it's been all moved into Azure Monitor. So in Azure Monitor, if you go to Alerts, this is where you go to create your new alert rules, and it's pretty cool. I was working with a client just last week, we're setting up a couple alerts in a training environment. You first select your targets for these, and you can do it by by multiple criteria. So you can do it by subscription, by resource type, by resource group, by specific resources. So I can do it by all resource types, or I can get specific to, let's say, virtual machines is very popular. And then I can say, hey, I can go to a particular resource group, or I can do all resource groups, and I can go to an actual specific resource. I'm just going to say, keep it very high level. And then I can start adding criteria. Now, what's great about the criteria now is it has pre-created alerts for me, so I don't actually have to create the script on, for, to determine if a VM was created or updated. It has all these for me. And I can choose, is this log coming from, categorized as administrative, security, recommendation, policy, or auto scale. So right now, with a couple clicks, I can create an alert and let to do a notification anytime a VM is created or updated in subscription, in a resource group. I can create multiple criteria. And then this is pretty cool. All right, let's go right to the action group because I know we're running out of time. You can create action groups. And in the action group, you can create multiple types of actions. And we're just having kind of a, I guess because I'm presenting and this is being recorded. So under action types, you can automatically send out emails, make phone calls, send text messages. You can do webhooks. You can call Azure Logic apps. In fact, last week I just showed a client how easy it is based on any type of alert that you could get in the Azure portal have that alert once it's registered sent right into Microsoft Teams or Slack. It's just very, very, very easy to do. So I encourage you to start playing around, if you haven't, with the alerts in Azure Monitor, because it's easy to use and it can be extremely powerful. So with that, I think we got to get to talk about our Azure Network and Security Assessment. So we're offering Azure Network and Security Assessments. This is just kind of a high-level overview of some of the things that it can cover. And the last poll, the final poll that we'll launch, will be so you can identify if you're interested and have a Microsoft-funded Azure networking assessment done. Now, separate from that poll, if anyone was interested in Azure services, you can go to messageops.com/Azure-services, and you can fill out a request form. As Brandon mentioned earlier, a copy of the slides will be sent out, and everyone who attended is automatically entered into a raffle for a GoPro Hero 7. So that's everyone who attended the webinar. And let's go ahead and launch that last poll. So this is, would you like to take advantage of the Microsoft-funded network and security assessment? We'll leave that open for a little bit. And we're averaging about 18% with a yes, about 50% maybe, and then 33% no. You know, the numbers are going up and down. But these are great. We've done Azure Network and Security assessments for many, many clients. It's Microsoft funded, so it's essentially you get free services, and a lot of the times, you know, it'll consist of, we'll do training, we'll do a small workshop or proof of concept with you, and then we'll actually create an assessment of moving resources into Azure. We can also offer assessments of existing Azure environments and you know, get into much more details on security networking and how you have things set up. All right, so we'll go ahead and close that poll. Thank you for everyone who took the time to fill that out.
Hey, Jason, one more thing on the Azure Network Assessments and Security piece. If we can try and do some of that stuff here on my side with my team. We're looking at doing that too from the on-prem getting to Azure as well. So if you already have equipment on site, you're looking to figure out what we have. If it's capable, we can start to go to that piece as well. And then I saw somebody also ask a question. They sent it privately to me, like what size organizations kind of merit the assessment. Honestly, it's anything from SMB up to larger customers. We're comfortable going across either side.
Yeah, we've had, I think, many SMB clients take advantage of the Microsoft funded assessments, and yeah, I think a lot of them have gotten great value out of it, because we'll do training as well as a proof of concept or a small workshop, and as well as the assessment. So it's a great way to, if you're moving into Azure, or your resources need some additional training, or you know, just, you know, assistance kind of working through a initial proof of concept. All right, so should we
thank you there, Jason.
Yeah, should we try to tackle some more of those questions?
Yep, let's try and go through them here. So I tried to keep up with a bunch of them going through here. I know a lot of you guys were asking a lot of the questions. They came back to pricing on the Azure Firewall. I know some of you asked if they kept it running for essentially 24 hours a day, 365. It came out to be almost $11K a year. I think that's close based on the numbers that we saw out there. Of course, you can do scripting to turn it up and turn it down, or manually turning it up or down, depending on when you have business and when you don't. I know that some works for some organizations, it may not work for all of them. So that's definitely something that's out there. And I know there's another question that you may be able to answer on this side, Jason. There was a question asked of, the data transfer, does that include transferring data to and from Office 365 internally as well?
No, that is a good question. To make sure we're giving you the 100% correct answer, we'd have to look that up.
Awesome. So we can definitely pull that information for you guys. And I know another question was actually on the Azure Monitor and sending alerts. They were asking, can it interface directly with MS Service Center?
Microsoft Service Center is, I don't know, Brandon, maybe you can help me out. Is that tied to the like SECM or SCOM? Microsoft Service Center. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with Microsoft Service Center.
All right, we'll keep going through the questions. Gentleman who asked that question, if you want to, if you could rephrase a little bit for us, we can definitely jump in to try and get you an answer on that. There was another good question that came up asking if there was anything that can manage all of the NSGs in one location.
So managing the NSGs, well, the default answer is that all your NSGs will show up in your NSG Azure resources. So if you're looking to, is the question that you're looking to manage the port settings from something centralized, and you can have those port settings pushed out to all the NSGs or select NSGs? Because if that's the question, you can do that through scripting, but it might be useful. We could have maybe an offline conversation of what the goal is. Maybe there's some different ways of going about it that might be simpler.
Perfect. And we can definitely dig into that one offline just to kind of keep some of the questions going, guys. I know we only have 8 minutes left here on this side. There's another gentleman that asked for best practices for Cloud SIEM and avoiding the very expensive costs. I could talk a little bit on that one. I know if you're looking at Splunk and some of them, they're charging by terabyte or terabit coming into it per day, per hour. They have different models that are out there. There's some tools we work around that can help out with that piece of it. We'll definitely try and follow up on that side. They help out with dedupe and some stuff, both in the cloud and on-premise. And then there was another person that asked if the presentation will be available. Yes, this thing was being recorded. We're going to send out a PDF of slides and everything else on that piece of it. So you guys will start to see those as they come in. I think that's it for the questions. If anybody missed anything, or if there's anybody that has a hand raised, I'm going to try and get to you guys here. I'm just starting to dig through it here now.
Okay, and we'll also follow up with folks for any, if we go through and we find out we missed some. So if we missed your question or hand raise, we apologize. We will do our best to go back through the webinar log and connect with you.
And everybody, thank you very much for joining us today from the champion side of things. We had myself, Brandon Duclos, and Jason on today. So any questions that come up, feel free to kick them over. We're going to go ahead and send out these presentations and everything to everybody. Jason, do you have anything else you'd like to add here before we wrap it all up?
No, other than, thanks for attending. And, Azure is it's a very wide and deep offering. And, if you have questions, if you need training, if you need implementation, we're here to assist you with that. We can cover a number of different use cases, what we've done with clients in different industries across different, client sizes. So, we can bring a lot of value to helping you either kind of achieve the goals that you have, or, overcoming particular challenges with a particular deployment or implementation that you're trying to do. So we'd love to the opportunity to partner with you as part of your Azure journey.
Great. And thank you very much there. Let me just make sure there's no more questions here before we wrap everything up. Awesome. Looks like just people saying thank you to both for everybody. So we're definitely here. We definitely want to have you help you guys and see whatever we can do here. And if you have any ideas about future webinars, stuff you guys would like to hear, feel free to throw that in the questions or anything else, guys. If not, we'll try and give you 5 minutes back in your day, and I hope you guys all have a great week.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.